Was geht ab, YouTube? Wir schauen jetzt The Bernie Sanders Betrayal von GDF. Wenn euch das Video gefällt, lasst ein Like da, einen Kommentar oder ein Abo oder bimmelt meine Glocken oder schaut in meinem Stream vorbei. Und ja, kann man auf jeden Fall mal bimmeln, würde ich sagen. Und wir gehen da jetzt rein, ne? Let's go.
Hey everyone, just wanted to take a moment to say thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more videos like this. And if you want to support me, become a patron for exclusive content that can't be published on YouTube.
This is disturbing. It looks from this vantage point like an officer down.
I rely on all my patrons because I am not advertiser friendly and I have 0 sponsors. Thank you all for your help.
Also, Dankeschön. Dankeschön, Tara
Der
X.
ist schon 3 Monate dabei.
Vielen lieben Dank. Dankeschön, Taralex, für den 3. Monat. Der nächste ist der wichtigste. Vielen lieben Dank für den Support. Ne? Du weißt, wie es läuft. Dankeschön. Vielen lieben Dank. Vom ganzen Herzen danke ich dir und alle anderen Supporter für den ganzen Support. Ohne euch wäre meine Arbeit hier nicht möglich. Am Redempfest, Alter! Okay, wir schauen jetzt weiter. Werd doch mal sauer, du Hurensohn! Werd doch mal selber sauer, du Hurensohn, Alter. Komm, tamam.
Was machst denn da? Also, ja,
werd doch mal sauer, du Hurensohn! Digga, ihr denkt echt, ihr seid lustig, ne? Aber wenn ihr das übertreibt, dann mache ich ihr einfach aus, weißt du? So, ich bin am längeren Hebel, so. Und ich habe auch einen längeren Hebel in der Hose. Wisst ihr, wie ich meine? So sieht das aus. Also, Nelix, schön, dass du da bist und wir gehen jetzt hier rein, Alter. Komm, tamam.
In August of 2014, Bernie Sanders held what turned out to be an explosive town hall meeting in the backdrop of Israel's then ongoing destruction of Gaza following years of land, air, and sea blockade. When asked about what he
Digga, der hat immer so Soundspikes. Ich mach das mal noch einen leiser.
Intended to do about Israel's widespread destruction.
Ich brauch das, meine Mutter hat mich gerade zu radikal genannt. Das ist ein Kompliment, ne? Du kannst dir erklären, dass radikal bedeutet von der Wurzel aus. Und warum sollte man Probleme nicht von der Wurzel aus lösen? Das ergibt keinen Sinn, weißt du? So, radikal für etwas Gutes zu sein, kann doch nicht schlecht sein, oder?
Ultimately included some 18,000.
Klar, wenn man radikal für was Schlechtes ist, ist das nicht gut. Aber wenn man radikal für Gleichberechtigung und die Freiheit aller Menschen ist, sehe ich da ja kein Problem. So.
Homes destroyed and more than 2,000 people killed, Sanders stunned supporters by adopting pro-Israel talking points.
Has Israel overreacted? Have they bombed UN facilities? The answer is yes. That is terribly, terribly wrong in my mind. On the other hand, and there is another hand on this issue, you have a situation where Hamas is sending missiles into Israel. Okay. And you know where some of those missiles are coming from? They're coming from populated areas. That's a fact.
Ach du Scheiße, Digga.
Hamas has used money that came into Gaza for construction purposes, and God knows they need roads and all the things that they
Warum wird's jetzt so viel lauter, Mann?
And used some of that money to build these very sophisticated
Alter, der Sound wird immer lauter.
Into Israel for military purposes. And I'm trying to.
Israel has the right to resist.
If you don't,
yes, they did.
You know, excuse me, shut up. You don't have the microphone. You've asked. You know, I don't want police officers here.
You're going to arrest people?
No, I'm not going to arrest people. But are you going to allow us? Are you going to allow us to have a discussion? What do you think?
You come down here. You're up there. Come down and be democratic. So in a discussion with people.
Are you asking for the point?
Occupied populations have the right to resist.
Bernie's takes were all the more shocking given his record of
Du hast nicht den Redeball.
anti-war activism. He voted
Du hast nicht den Redeball. Ich hab das Mikrofon, Alter.
against both Iraq wars, for example, something he boasts about proudly.
I urge my fellow members to ask the president
to stop the bombing immediately.
A preemptive war against Iraq.
Boah, das mit dem Sound fuckt mich voll ab, Alter. Warte, ich mach noch mal einen lauter. Ich hoffe, das passt jetzt so. Aber das jumpt die ganze Zeit so hin und her. Like, das geht ins Rote und dann geht's wieder nicht ins Rote. So.
Be a terrible mistake.
War is a human abomination.
War is a horror.
This video wasn't my original plan. In fact, I intended to do a profile on Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic nominee for the New York mayoral race. But in researching Mamdani's meteoric rise, I found myself reliving these last 2 years. Just days after October 7th, Mamdani was arrested outside pro-Israel stalwart Chuck Schumer's home.
Zohran Mamdani shamelessly joined an anti-Israel mob outside Senator Schumer's home.
The New York assemblyman was already warning of an imminent genocide.
We are looking at imminent genocide.
Credibly, as it turned out, in line with the very early warnings of UN experts, the Center for Constitutional Rights, and even Israeli Holocaust scholars, including Raz Siegel.
More than 800 international law and genocide scholars have signed on to a public statement arguing Gaza is being subjected to a genocidal siege and destructive assault.
All of them, including the Holocaust and genocide studies scholars among them, there's quite a few and some very influential scholars in the field, are all very concerned about what, in my view, is already a genocidal assault, but certainly the prospect of genocidal assault.
And Brown University's Omer Bartov, considered a leading expert in the field.
The possibility of genocide is staring us in the face. And one thing we know about genocide is that it often begins with ethnic cleansing. In fact, that's what happened in the Holocaust.
Indeed, in reviewing Mamdani's record, I couldn't help but get angry as I was reliving a profound betrayal. Of course, we remember the now infamous declaration from Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant just 2 days after October 7th, ordering to cut off electricity, food, and water to the Strip. Gallant also said that they were fighting human animals. But Israel's supporters assured the world that he was merely talking about Hamas, given that his order to cut off food, water, and electricity by definition applied to the entire population of Gaza. This claim was naturally unconvincing. On top of the siege, the scale of Israel's bombing campaign was clearly unprecedented. The reality was setting in, and it was clear that each day mattered enormously, given that the scale and pace of the bombing, the lack of food, and the lack of energy required to pump water was going to cause a catastrophe.
هنا الأطفال والشيوخ والكبار لا أستطيع أن أقدم لهم أنا أونروا لو أنا مديرة هذا اللواء ولا أستطيع أن أقدم لهم أي شيء لا أكل ولا شرب فعم بدنا أنسولين ناس بتموت بدها أنسولين مش قادرين نوفر لها شيء.
By the end of the month, the director of the New York office for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights resigned over what he called textbook genocide.
Digga, ich weiß nicht, wo ich die Scheiße hin tun soll. Hier.
But by the end of the month, with each day a grueling slog through mere images of apocalyptic destruction and displacement, there was a noticeably absent voice among those desperately ringing the alarm bells. In an open letter signed by over 400 former staffers of Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, the signatories urged Bernie to introduce a ceasefire resolution.
Hi, Bernie.
Hey, Bernie.
Hi, Senator Sanders.
You, Bernie, are the strongest voice in the U.S. Senate on progressive foreign policy.
We are disappointed that you have not taken leadership in this moment, calling for a ceasefire.
While your statements thus far have called for the bombs and missiles from both sides to end, we urge you to stand with those in the U.S. House of Representatives who have introduced a formal resolution calling for a ceasefire in the region. That House resolution was introduced on the 16th of October, when already 2,600 Palestinians had been killed, according to the text of the resolution. Its sponsors included Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, Andre Carson, Summer Lee, Delia Ramirez, Bonnie Watson-Coleman, Jesus Choi Garcia, Jonathan Jackson, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Nidia Velasquez. Two other sponsors, Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush, are no longer on the Hill owing to a record-breaking AIPAC spending campaign. In the letter from Bernie's former staffers, which was published on the 24th of October, the numbers killed had reached over 5,000, underscoring the rate of killing. Again, each day mattered a great deal, and each day that Bernie was not calling for a ceasefire baffled many.
We are here because we know the senator is not the kind of person who would wait for double digits of massacre before he speaks out to say this is wrong and we need a ceasefire. We know he is not that kind of leader. We know that. That's why we're here calling on him to be the first voice in the Senate to explicitly call for a ceasefire now.
President Biden clearly values your counsel, as is shown by the ways you've managed to shape the outcomes of his presidency. We urge you to make it clear what is at stake in this crisis politically, morally, and strategically. Many of us, your former staff, are Muslim and or Arab, and
Ey, Jongan, was geht ab? Schön, dass du da bist.
were inspired to support your campaign because of your calls to end the forever wars waged against people who look like us and worship like us. We felt proud to serve a candidate who acknowledged the plight and humanity of Palestinians and who spoke out against the Israeli occupation.
We are going to have to treat the Palestinian people with respect and dignity. The occupation must be ended.
Many of us, your former staff, share your Jewish heritage. Like your family, many of our families had entire sections erased from existence by Nazi barbarism in the Holocaust. It is our duty to stand up and say that our pain and sorrow at the losses on October 7th will not be weaponized to justify the ethnic cleansing or genocide of Palestinian civilians. We are seeing a revitalization of the anti-war and pro-peace movement across the country, a movement you have led for decades. You are the strongest voice in the U.S. Senate on progressive foreign policy. We need you to stand up forcefully, as you always have, against war and bombs, and for peace, freedom, and justice. Indeed, Jewish activists for Palestine, most notably those under the banners of Jewish Voice for Peace and If Not Now, had blocked entrances near the White House, occupied a Capitol building rotunda, and shut down New York's Grand Central Station in just the month of October 2023. They called for a ceasefire in Gaza and were arrested for doing so.
We've already seen more than 7,000 Palestinians be killed, close to 3,000 Palestinian children, one Palestinian child killed every 15 minutes. These New Yorkers and so many across the state are saying the time is now for a ceasefire, and if you're not calling for it, you're supporting a genocide.
And these were just some of the protests they held across the country. On the 30th of October, Ali Harb wrote for Al Jazeera, Bernie Sanders' failure to back Israel-Gaza ceasefire upsets U.S. followers. As the Israeli military offensive in Gaza
Und der wurde gewählt, ja, Mann.
intensified.
Das ist immer, weißt du, das ist immerhin geil, dass der gewählt wurde, aber es ist halt wirklich. Bernie Sanders Betrayal trifft es halt echt gut, Alter, weil Bernie Sanders ist halt wirklich jemand, Digga, der wie schon gesagt wurde, der eigentlich immer für das Richtige gekämpft hat, sich immer gegen Krieg ausgesprochen hat, immer gegen, immer für das Richtige eigentlich eingestanden hat und dann bei so etwas halt sehr lange geschwiegen hat, ne? Ich bin mir jetzt auch nicht genau sicher, wie lange und so, deswegen gucken wir uns das ja auch an. Weil ich da auch ein bisschen mein Gedächtnis auffrischen wollte. Ja, es ist halt einfach bedauerlich, ne?
Killing thousands of children.
Aber ich habe auch gestern bei Zaravella im Stream schon geschrieben, dass ich sowieso seit 2016, Bernie Sanders war ja Präsidentschaftskandidat 2016 und der wurde ja dann von dem Democratic Nominee, also der hat ja, erstmal musste der kämpfen, dass er als demokratischer Kandidat zugelassen wird und dann hat sich die ganze demokratische Partei gegen ihn verschworen, die haben einen Milliardär rangeholt, der dann irgendwie seine Stimmen auch noch Hillary gegeben hat und alle sind rausgedroppt und haben ihre Stimmen Hillary gegeben, die haben sich die ganzen Leute haben sich dahinter gestellt, dass Bernie nicht Präsidentschaftskandidat wird, weil er halt Medicare for All wollte und halt Sozialdemokrat ist, weißt du, wie ich meine so. Und und dass er danach, nachdem er so hardcore gefickt wurde von der Democratic Party, dann immer noch so dabei ist und immer noch in der Democratic Party mitwirkt, das war halt für mich schon so ein dickes F, Alter. Weil wie kannst du denn immer noch in einer Partei sein, die dich so hardcore gefickt hat? Weißt du? Die Partei hat dich 2016 so sabotiert und danach bist du immer noch dabei. Und denk mir so, hä? Crazy. So, verrückt. Ich hatte 2016 hatte ich Cope, Digga. 2016, da war ich noch Sweet Summer Child mäßig, weißt du? 2016 war ich so, boah, ja, Mann, Bernie Sanders, der wird in Amerika an die Macht kommen und die Welt wird sich zum Besseren drehen. Die Welt wird besser, Demokratie funktioniert, let's go. So, und dann siehst du halt, was da passiert, Alter. Das ist wirklich krass. Dazu müssten wir uns auch mal was angucken. Das ist ja auch schon jetzt ein bisschen was her, ne? 9 Jahre. Ach du Scheiße, das ist 9 Jahre her, boah. Ja, krass. Willst in den USA geht's halt nicht anders. Ja, das ist halt immer der ganze Gelaber, ne? Aber wenn man sich Eugene Debs anguckt, der ja auch in einer sozialistischen Partei gerunnt ist, also man kann ja auch eine sozialistische Partei gründen. Und anhand dessen so Wahlkampf machen und für deine Werte agitieren und so. Das ist ja in der Vergangenheit auch schon passiert und damals gab es ja auch Republican und Democratic Party. Trotzdem haben Sozialisten sich unter eine sozialistische Partei gestellt und nicht unter eine Partei, die halt Teil des Establishments ist, ne?
Leveling entire neighborhoods, Sanders has not called for a ceasefire. Because of his reputation as an anti-war voice, critics say he is uniquely positioned to amplify demand.
Es geht halt nicht anders, es geht immer anders, weißt du? Es geht immer anders.
For ending the hostilities in Gaza. Quoting Ava Borgwart, political director at If Not Now, we need leaders with the courage and the legacy of anti-war activism to say all human life is precious by demanding a ceasefire. If anyone can do that in the Senate, it is Senator Sanders. Jewish activists had just protested the week prior at Bernie Sanders' office demanding he back a ceasefire and were arrested for doing so.
Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now.
Bernie Sanders, we need you to call for a ceasefire now.
Sanders was apparently unmoved. As Harb explains, throughout his 2 presidential campaigns, Sanders led a surging progressive movement in U.S. politics that adopted the Palestinian issue as a core tenet of its agenda.
So räudig, Alter. Das zum Wahlkampf benutzen und dann aber nicht, also weißt du, das ist so crazy. Das ist so crazy, Alter.
Sanders' message at the time resonated deeply with Arab and Muslim American communities, who rallied around his campaign and helped him win the Michigan Democratic primary in 2016 in one of the race's largest upsets. Omar Badar, a Palestinian American analyst who supported Sanders' 2020 presidential campaign, said it is, quote, hard to convey the depth of the disappointment. Amer Zahar, Palestinian-American comedian and activist who campaigned for Sanders in Arab communities across the country, also voiced dismay. After the massive support Bernie received from Arab, Muslim, and Palestinian Americans in 2016 and 2020, we would have expected he would have been one of the first to urge an immediate ceasefire. His failure to do so is an affront. His voice could open the door for many others to say the same. To call his actions or lack thereof a massive disappointment would be understating the hurt. Harp also quotes Noor Ali, a Michigan activist, as saying, while the Republican Party is outright in their Islamophobia, many Arab and Muslim Americans are realizing that the Democratic Party, both moderates and progressives, have used us as a talking point. On the 5th of November of 2023, Bernie Sanders gave an interview to CNN's Dana Bash to respond to the recent protest at his office.
I want to just clarify one thing.
Oh shit, jetzt wird's spannend, was jetzt sagt, Alter.
Senator, if I might. You support a humanitarian pause in Gaza. Some of your fellow progressives say that there should be a full-on ceasefire, which would require an agreement on both sides to halt the fighting. Do you support a ceasefire? And if not, why not?
Well, I don't know how you can have a ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, with an organization like Hamas, which is dedicated.
Damn. Crazy.
Dedicated to
turmoil and chaos and destroying the state of Israel. And I think what the Arab countries in the region understand, that Hamas has got to go. You got to have a pause in the bombing.
Und warum ist das jetzt wieder so leise, Mann?
Shortly after, AIPAC shared a clip from the interview on Twitter praising Bernie for his ceasefire take.
Hamas has got to go.
In another testament to just how much each day mattered, Gaza's Ministry of Health announced the following day that their death toll had surpassed 10,000 people.
Politician, the president gets up there, we're going to be tough. And these are evil guys. We're going to go to war. You know, what are the unintended consequences of that? Well, how many people are going to die?
You know, it is very easy for politicians to go before the people and talk about how tough we are. We want to wipe out everybody else. But I think if we have learned anything from history, is that we pursue every diplomatic option before we resort to military intervention.
Other commentators made their feelings known, feelings shared by many others. Brianna Joy Gray, the national press secretary for Bernie's 2020 campaign,
biggest political disappointment of our generation, Sanders answered Dana Bash CNN about fellow progressives calling for a ceasefire. Yeah.
Responded to the AIPAC tweet with, biggest political disappointment of our generation. Another former supporter, historian Norman Finkelstein.
Bernie Sanders is on the record saying it should continue. I barely can say that name anymore.
Das ist halt wirklich krass, ne? Boah.
Without being filled with contempt and disgust.
By comparison, Senator from Illinois Dick Durbin told CNN,
Dick? Ich finde das lustig, wenn Leute Dick heißen. So. Weil ich meine, das heißt ja, also weißt du, wie ich meine? Ich meine, ich habe das mal gegoogelt. Das kommt von Richard quasi. Richard Dick mäßig. Like, aber keine Ahnung, ist aber funny.
Days before Bernie.
Ich lache darüber, okay? In dieser Welt kann man auch mal über Schwanz lachen. So.
Sanders CNN interview that he supported a ceasefire.
Is a ceasefire needed now?
I think it is.
It was Durbin, not Sanders, to the surprise of many, who was the first senator.
Wer ist Durbin, Alter? Aber wer ist er?
To do
ich kenne ihn gar nicht.
So, Sanders declined to be interviewed by the Washington Post to discuss his views. But in written answers to questions provided to the Post, he said the, quote, tragic reality is that Hamas wants permanent war and the destruction of Israel, and would not abide by the ceasefire.
Digga.
So when did Bernie finally call for a
Guck dir das an, Digga, wie die Menschen da aus dem Müll irgendwas zu essen raussuchen, ne?
ceasefire? Bernie played a semantic game for a number of months after his CNN interview. On December 13th, 2023, he posted a letter to President Biden on Twitter where he laid out a grueling record of Israeli atrocities in Gaza and described the dire humanitarian disaster. Finally, he wrote, I ask that you support efforts at the United Nations to end the bloodshed, such as the recent resolution vetoed by the United States, that would have demanded an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, the unconditional release of all hostages, and full humanitarian access. However, Bernie explained in an interview 3 days prior what he meant by humanitarian ceasefire.
Why is it you oppose a ceasefire?
Well, first of all, I strongly support and wish and hope that the United States will support the United Nations resolution that was vetoed, that we vetoed the other day. That was a humanitarian pause, a humanitarian ceasefire that would have, by the way, called for the release of all of the hostages held by Hamas and would have allowed the UN and other agencies to begin to supply the enormous amount of humanitarian aid that the Palestinian people. In terms of a permanent ceasefire, I don't know how you can have a permanent ceasefire with Hamas, who has said before October 7th and after October 7th that they want to destroy Israel. They want a permanent war. I don't know how you have a permanent ceasefire
with an attitude like that.
Okay, so the war you're saying against Hamas is justified in that.
Das ist halt so verrückt, Digga. Jemand, der sonst immer, Digga, immer für Frieden ist, niemals für Krieg, sowas sagen zu hören. Boah.
I think Israel has the right to defend itself and to go after.
Das habe ich gesehen, den Clip habe ich gesehen, Digga.
Not the Palestinian people.
Den Clip habe ich gesehen und ich war nur so, ach du Scheiße, Digga.
Thanked him again.
Has the right to defend itself by committing genocide oder was? Verrückt.
By this point, at least 2 other senators had joined the call for a ceasefire, including Jeff Merkley of Oregon and even fellow Vermont Senator Peter Welch. In Bernie's letter to Biden, he said that, as of December 11th, 2023, some 18,000 people had been.
Nerelia Olla wollte ein bisschen mit dir übers RP quatschen. Hast du darauf Bock? Gerne auch onstream, wenn du willst. Sag mir einfach, wenn du dafür Zeit hast. Ja, sehr gerne. Also, wenn es, like, weißt du, so ein bisschen, so 10 Minütchen oder so? Oder meinst du so eine Stunde? Like, weil, wir könnten nach dem Video auf jeden Fall mal kurz quatschen, wenn du Bock hast.
And killed. Not enough, apparently, for Bernie to call for a permanent.
Das liegt ja an uns. Ja, okay. Also, wenn das Video vorbei ist, lasst zusammen quatschen. Schön, dass ihr da seid, Miko und Summer.
Ceasefire. Whatever Hamas's intentions, Bernie doesn't seem to understand or refuses to explain how it was remotely possible for Hamas's Al-Qassam brigades, a guerrilla army without an air force, navy, or mechanized army, to destroy the state of Israel, a nuclear power. I can only conclude that Bernie sought revenge and punishment for Hamas's mere desire, in Bernie's view, to destroy Israel. On February 14th, 2024, more than 24 senators signed a letter to the president urging him to secure the release of hostages in tandem with a restored mutual ceasefire in Gaza. Bernie Sanders' name was noticeably absent. Indeed, Bernie continued to use the word pause as late as February 2024.
Will work as hard as I can to get the Biden administration to support is a UN try to bring about a ceasefire, a humanitarian pause ceasefire.
Also gottlos.
On February 20th, Novara Media published an interview with Bernie Sanders. Sanders was interviewed by their senior editor, Ash Sarkar.
Is what Israel is doing in Gaza a genocide?
In my view, it is absolutely disgraceful, horrible, and I'm doing, as a United States Senator, everything I can to end it.
But do you buy the South African case at the International Court of Justice that what Israel is doing in Gaza constitutes genocide or genocidal acts?
I think, look, we can argue about definitions. It is horrible.
But if one agrees that it is a genocide...
Dann sag doch einfach, es ist ein Genozid, Mann. Warum hast du ein Problem damit, zu sagen, dass ein Genozid ist, Alter? Boah!
It means that other states have...
Er ist so am Schwimmen, Alter, ne?
...have a legal right...
So am Jeppen, Alter.
...duty to prevent genocidal acts being carried out.
But see, we can talk about that. But what does that mean?
There have been...
What does it mean? So? Ja, wir könnten ja darüber reden, aber warum sollen wir das machen so? Wir können einfach mal ein bisschen, ne? Wörter sind Wörter und die haben Bedeutungen, aber wir können ja auch einfach... Das ändert ja nichts, wenn wir hier Wörter benutzen in diesem Interview. Warum sind denn Wörter relevant in dem Interview? Lass doch einfach malen. Ach du Scheiße, Digga.
Many genocides over the 20th century where there were signs that things might become genocide. And for various reasons, political reasons of perception.
Ey, warte mal. Ich mach mal das Kofi-Goal. Irgendwie hier so hin, damit man da oben genau sieht, welches da... Oh, warte mal, das kriege ich aber schöner hin, oder? Ja, so ist in Ordnung. Damit man da das Datum, dass es nicht verdeckt wird.
Of all kinds of different opinions about this, people did not warn sufficiently in advance. And once things happen, it's first very difficult to stop them. And then, as we know, it's very difficult to bring people to account as well. So I think that one should always err on the side of caution and warn when there's sufficient signs, both in terms of how people speak about a potentially targeted group and then what sort of actions they're taking before genocide actually begins.
People's predictions and warnings of an imminent genocide, including from Holocaust scholars and UN experts, turned out to be true. History should not look back kindly on those in positions of power and influence who refused to join those that credibly warned of imminent genocide, now that the
Gänsehaut, wenn ich diese Bilder sehe, ne?
Opinion is overwhelming.
Es ist immer noch, also keine Ahnung, Digga, ich kann das einfach nicht, das ist einfach für mich nicht... Das ist einfach krank.
Too late, I might add, given that Gaza is destroyed, famished, with many tens of thousands of people dead. Bernie presumably granted Novara Media an interview to promote his book on capitalism, but Sarkar pressed him on his views on Palestine, revealing not only contradictions, but glaring moral failures.
Would you back calls for a cultural, sporting, and economic boycott of Israel?
I am nervous about economic boycotts of any country, to be honest with you.
I am nervous. Ey, LT, schön, dass du da bist, Freundschaft.
Did you feel nervous about the boycott movement against apartheid South Africa? Was that a concern you had at the time?
Gefickt, Alter. Gefickt. Oh, Digga. Tschüss. Tschüss, Digga. Tschüss. Die hat den Volley genommen, Alter. Holy fuck.
South Africa, was that a concern you had at the time?
But I thought that as an apartheid state at that point, it was important to put pressure. But people can do as they want.
Digga, ich weiß jetzt, was sie gleich sagen wird. Oh.
Yeah, that's all.
Indeed, despite...
nee, okay, never mind. Aber, okay, also ein Apartheid-Staat, Pressure zu putten ist gut, aber wenn es um Israel geht, nicht. Naja, okay, interessant. Ach du Scheiße, Digga. Die hat den so Volley genommen, ne, holy fuck, Digga, Digga, da brauchst du nicht mal hier eine, Dings. Da brauchst du nicht mal Torlinientechnik, um zu sehen, dass der im Tor war, weißt du, wie ich meine? Dass der Volley auf jeden Fall unter die Latte ging, Alter, oder so, keine Ahnung. Fußball-Talk und so, wisst ihr? Ich muss mal hier meine Audiences erweitern. Wir talken jetzt auch über Fußball. Wisst ihr, dass mein Lieblingsfußballer Zlatan Ibrahimovic ist? Ja, jetzt wisst ihr es. So, wir gucken uns mal irgendwann ein Zlatan Ibrahimovic Tor-Highlight an, weil Zlatan ist wirklich eine Legende, Digga, wirklich. Richtiger Löwerin. Schön, dass du da bist, Kexos.
The characterization of Bernie's views by his former staffers, who said the senator has spoken with moral clarity on the issues of Israel and Palestine, Bernie apparently can't or won't acknowledge that if boycotting South Africa was...
Ich bin erstmal weg, seid brav und hab noch einen schönen Stream. Bieter, schön, dass du da warst. Pass auf dich auf. Schönen Tag noch.
...justified, certainly boycotting the state of Israel is justified. If Bernie knows...
Schön, dass du da bist. Es geht bei dir... Heute mal ein bisschen früher Nachrichten gucken, weil später ist ja Minecraft-RP. Ja, das ist so das Ding. Wir machen heute 2 Streams.
Even basic facts about apartheid South Africa and Palestine.
It's a facility that most Israelis are oblivious to, but many Palestinians know it well. This compound houses the Salem Military Courthouse.
Indeed, former...
Scheiße, dazu haben wir auch schon Videos gesehen, Alter. Das ist sehr gottlos, was da abgeht.
U.S. President Jimmy Carter has concluded what is virtually undeniable.
Apartheid is exactly accurate. So within Palestinian territory, they're absolutely and totally separated. Much more.
Ein ehemaliger US-Präsident kriegt hin, das zu sagen, aber nicht Bernie Sanders, Digga? Wow. Krass.
Worse than they were in South Africa, by the way. And the Israelis completely...
Much worse than they were in South Africa, by the way. Alter, Digga, Alter. Und das von einem ehemaligen US-Präsidenten, Digga. Das, oh. Ach du Scheiße.
Dominate the life of the Palestinian people.
Oof, Digga, oof.
Indeed, a former UN expert on human rights in the occupied Palestinian territories concluded the same in a 2022 report. There are pitiless features of the apartness rule by Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory that were not practiced in southern Africa, such as segregated highways, high walls and extensive checkpoints, a barricaded population, missile strikes, and tank shelling of a civilian population. Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and Israeli human rights group B'Tselem have concluded the same. Interestingly enough, Bernie has cited B'Tselem before.
According to the Israeli human rights group, B'Tselem,
in May 2017, Bernie gave an interview to Al Jazeera where Dina Takruri asked about BDS as well.
The boycott, divestment, sanctions movement known as BDS. You, in your lifetime, are a longtime proponent of nonviolent protests. This, in the eyes of many Palestinians, is the effective way to get Israel to comply with international law and respect Palestinian human rights. Do you accept that?
No, I don't. I mean, look, I respect people will do what they want to do, but I think, again, our job as a nation is to do everything humanly possible to bring Israel and the Palestinians and the entire Middle East to the degree that we can together. But no, I'm not a supporter of that.
Palestinians will say they've resisted violently, they get punished. They resist non-violently with BDS, they're also punished. What, if not BDS, is left for the Palestinians to do?
Well, what must be done is that the United States of America must have a Middle East policy which is even-handed.
It's increasingly evident that hopes for a two-state solution are almost dead. At the same time, polls among Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and Gaza are showing that they're increasingly in favor of a one-state solution with equal rights for Israelis and Palestinians alike and equal citizenship. Is that something you believe could happen, or is that something you support?
No, I don't. I mean, I think if that happens, then that would be the end of the state of Israel. And I support Israel's right to exist.
Bernie doesn't support a state with equal rights, even when a two-state solution appeared all but impossible by that point. At the 2017 convention for J Street, the liberal Zionist lobby, Bernie explains his pro-Israel sympathies and history.
I lived on a kibbutz for many months in Haifa. And it was a very powerful experience for me, something that I will never forget. It was there that I saw and experienced for myself many of the progressive values upon which the state of Israel was founded.
Ay, ay, ay. Progressive Values, Alter. Vertreibung von Palästinensern, Progressive Values. Keine Saftschubse schütten, dass du da bist, ey.
I think it is important for everyone, but particularly for progressives, to acknowledge the enormous achievement of establishing a democratic homeland for the Jewish people after centuries of displacement and persecution, and particularly after the horrors of the Holocaust.
Israel has done some very bad things. So has every other country on earth.
In a 2019 essay for Jewish Currents, Bernie further advanced the values of liberal Zionism. My pride and admiration for Israel lives alongside my support for Palestinian freedom and independence. I reject the notion that there is any contradiction there. After October 7th, maybe Bernie's pride in Israel, as he described it, came under attack. After all, Israel is a country he clearly has a romantic attachment to.
When I look at the Middle East, I see our ally Israel making enormous technological advances with the capacity to serve as an engine of innovation and prosperity for the entire region. This week, my friends in Israel will observe your Memorial Day, the remembrance of those who have fallen in defense of the state of Israel. And we honor those who have fallen.
This attachment allowed Bernie to tolerate enormous atrocities.
Do I think Biden is a great campaigner? No, I don't. But I think he was an excellent president. Bring home the hostages and demand an immediate ceasefire.
In August of 2024, Bernie finally used the word ceasefire, not pause or humanitarian ceasefire. At this point, some 40,000 people had been killed, according to Gaza's Ministry of Health.
40,000 Palestinian lives lost, according to Gaza's health ministry.
However, we now know that the Ministry of Health's figures were likely a massive underestimate by some 40%, according to two studies conducted with different methodologies, both published in the Lancet Medical Journal.
Senator Sanders, what is your definition of the word ceasefire?
On October 7th, Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, invaded Israel and killed 1,200 innocent men, women, and children, took 200 hostages. They are a terrorist organization. Israel responded as any government would respond to an attack like that. Israel had the right to defend itself. But what has happened since then is, rather than just go after Hamas, a terrorist organization, what Israel, under an extreme right-wing government led by Benjamin Netanyahu, these are racist. So this is the cabinet. What they have done is say, hey, we're not just going to go after Hamas. We're going to go after the Palestinian people.
I also noticed that his criticisms of Israel are directed at Israel's right-wing government.
The right-wing extremist Netanyahu government, right-wing extremist government in Israel.
Indeed, he continues to employ this language today. You have to understand, Israel today has a lame duck opposition. Out of the opposition leaders who would in theory challenge Netanyahu in an election, Yair Lapid, Benny Gantz, Gadi Eisenkot, perhaps only Naftali Bennett would be able to build a coalition and become prime minister. Indeed, Bennett was briefly prime minister from June 2021 to June 2022, when he was in a rotating government with Yair Lapid. Just days after October 7th, Bennett spoke to Sky News, where he exploded at the interviewer for merely mentioning Palestinian civilians.
Are you seriously keep on asking me about Palestinian civilians? What's wrong with you? Have you not seen what happened? We're fighting Nazis.
If
Ach du Scheiße, Dicker.
Bernie is concerned with the humanitarian situation in Gaza and Israel's bombing and blockade, perhaps he'd be interested in Naftali Bennett's Gaza plan he unveiled in October 2023. As reported by Israeli religious Zionist website Srugim, Bennett called to impose a complete siege on the northern strip to dry out and suffocate the Hamas terrorists in the tunnels until they are forced to leave.
Währenddessen hier die Bilder von den untergewichtigen Kindern, ne?
A plan similar to the so-called General's Plan to starve out North Gaza. Additionally, Bennett sought to create a new security zone 2 kilometers deep into the Gaza Strip along our entire border, a permanent zone. This is done by using massive firepower, ground forces, and engineering. Imagine bulldozers simply flattening the area. And third, to continue...
I don't have to imagine.
Use firepower
anymore
on Hamas throughout the Gaza Strip. Israel is conducting a continuous series of targeted ground operations with enormous firepower to disintegrate Hamas neighborhood by neighborhood. Yair Lapid, officially the leader of the opposition as head of the Yesh Atid party, supported a total siege of Gaza as well.
The Defense Minister Yoav Gallant ordered a complete siege of Gaza, meaning cutting off all supplies, including food and electricity.
We don't have to respond to this. You should direct the question to Hamas. It's their fault. Ask them why is this happening.
But you support that decision?
I support everything necessary to make sure Hamas doesn't have the capabilities to butcher Israelis just because they're Jews. Yes.
Another opposition leader is Benny Gantz, who leads the Blue and White Party. Gantz previously served as IDF chief of staff from 2011 to 2015. In a guest essay for the New York Times, Gantz criticized Netanyahu for his conduct in Gaza. Despite Mr. Netanyahu's hesitation, I pressed for an immediate ground operation in Gaza. I called for a stronger and faster ground offensive in Rafah, despite the international pressure. I called...
Na, also da mit den letzten paar Minuten sehen wir auch, dass dieses Gelaber immer von, ja, ist ja nur Netanyahu, der da böse ist, alle anderen sind ja Demokraten, dies, das. Das ist halt alles auch Quitschi-Quatschi, Alter, ne? Mutmaßlich.
For a powerful response on Iranian soil following the first Iranian attack in April 2024, while Mr. Netanyahu opted for a more restrained, symbolic response. And still today, I fully support maintaining a long-term military presence on the entire Gaza perimeter to prevent Hamas from ever regrouping. This Benny Gantz campaign ad proudly shows videos of buildings flattened by Israel in 2014. The ad boasts that this
Was? 2014? Das ist aber vor dem 7. Oktober 2023 gewesen. Wie kann das denn sein? Ich dachte, die Geschichte hat am 7. Oktober begonnen. Moment mal. Das ist ja komisch. Das ist ja vor dem 7. Oktober. Krass. Meine Uhr zeigt mir an, dass da ja auch irgendwie vor dem 7. Oktober 2023 auch schon Sachen passiert sind. Krass.
Construction yielded 3.5 years of quiet. Gadi Eisenkot, formerly of the National Unity Party, has since formed his own party called Yassar. You may know Eisenkot from his long military career, including Chief of Northern Command. In that capacity, he unveiled his notorious Dahiyya doctrine in a 2008 interview with Yediot Aharonot. What happened in the Dahiyya quarter of Beirut in 2006 will happen in every village from which Israel is fired on. Dahiyya was a Hezbollah stronghold that Israel flattened in sustained air raids during a 34-day war with the Shia group 2 years ago. We will apply disproportionate force on the village and cause great damage and...
Ja, Digga, es ist halt einfach ein Zitat. Er sagt, we will apply disproportionate force. Er sagt einfach, wir werden zu viel, also wir werden, disproportionale Gewalt anwenden. Das ist ein Zitat, Bro.
Destruction there. These are not civilian villages, they are military bases. By November 10th, 2023, an analysis for the Washington Post wondered aloud if this was the doctrine guiding the Israeli military in Gaza. Indeed, Eisenkot's plan appeared to be firmly in place, as evidenced by a Srugim article from the same day, which reported that the IDF wiped out entire neighborhoods in Gaza. Indeed, already on October 11th, 2023, the Jerusalem Post quoted Air Force Chief Omer Tischler as saying that his forces are dropping thousands of bombs around the clock. We are attacking very aggressively any place which Hamas and its people are using, he said. Even Yair Golan, who leads the Democrats Party, the successor of the Labor and Meretz parties, advocated for an invasion and occupation of a portion of southern Lebanon. One opinion headline in the Israeli Haaretz concluded, with a left wing that wants to occupy Lebanon, Israel lacks a true alternative to Netanyahu. But Golan's party is hardly considered a serious contender like the others I've mentioned. Bernie's insistence on criticizing only the right-wing government of Israel perhaps stems from a conviction that he has that if Israel were led by someone other than Netanyahu, then Israel would return to a former glory, a golden age of democracy and human rights. He sounded especially out of touch with reality when he said, at the 2017 convention for J Street, the liberal
Punksy, was geht ab?
Zionist lobby,
Israel's
Was geht ab, Punksy? Ronny, schön dich wiederzusehen. Ja, Kumpfi, schön, dass du da bist.
continued occupation of Palestinian territories and its daily restrictions on the political and civil liberties of the Palestinian people runs contrary to fundamental American values and, I believe, Israeli values as well.
The Palestinians who lived in Israel were placed under military rule from 1948, the year of Israel's founding, to the end of 1966. The current military rule and occupation of Gaza and the West Bank began in June of 1967. There has literally not been a single year of Israel's existence where they have not occupied Palestinians.
קדש, מכמה? 9 שנים. 9? כן. יקום. יקום? כן, כן, בסדר. אתה זורק פה לפעמים אבנים? לא, אף פעם? בטוח? סלמת לילדים. אבל לא ככה, למה אתם לא באים ב-10 בבוקר, לא ב-2, 3 אני אחורה, עד שיוצאים. אני מתכוון אליהם. צאנו.
Another issue I have with Bernie is his long time and repeated insistence on calling the state of Israel a democracy that shares values with other democracies.
The United States and Israel are united by historical ties. We are united by culture. We are united by our values, including a deep commitment to democratic principles.
Democratic Principles, mir die Eier, Alter.
Rights and the rule of law.
Meir Kahane, if you don't know, led the Kach party and was elected to the Israeli Knesset in 1984. His positions included expelling...
Wait, Moment mal. Das ist der, den wir gestern gegoogelt haben, ne? Kahan. Aha! Knowledge. Gelernt und angewandt.
The rule of law.
Meir Kahane, if you don't know, led the Kach party and was elected to the Israeli Knesset in 1984. His positions included expelling all Palestinians from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. Though, as explained by Israeli journalists Yossi Melman and Dan Raviv in 1988, expulsion was not a new idea. Besides the obvious expulsion orders during the Nakba of 1948, after the 1967 war, the Israeli cabinet discussed expelling Palestinians from the newly captured West Bank and Gaza Strip to the Sinai Desert. Melman and Raviv write, nothing practical emerged from these grand ideas, but the notion of transferring the Arab population survived. Over the years, it has taken various forms, but the record shows that relocation has always been an Israeli option, discussed quietly but seriously, and not simply a proposal.
Das war jetzt nicht die Meinung, dass ich gleich 4 Nachrichtensendungen am Stück hören will. Bin jedenfalls wieder da. Wie meinst du 4 Nachrichtensendungen am Stück? Das verstehe ich nicht.
Of right-wing extremists. Once, while speaking at the University of Minnesota, Kahane offended liberal Zionists by insisting that Israel was not a Western-style democracy. Kahane was, quite obviously, unrestrained by political correctness.
Israel's Declaration of Independence speaks of a Jewish state. The Constitution does not speak of a Christian state. It is not Western-style democracy.
England is a Western-style democracy, and in England, they have a state religion, the Anglican Church, and technically all of their laws are based on the idea of the king and queen. But in fact, it functions as a Western-style
Great
democracy.
Britain does not limit immigration to Christians. Great Britain does not say that state land can only be bought by Christians. So stop playing games here. Now, I am all for those laws. Not because they're racist laws, of course not, but because they ensure
of course not.
the survival of Israel as the Jewish state. And that's not Western democracy, but thank God we have chosen that path, because if ever there's a choice between Western democracy, which means that the Arabs have a right to be the majority through peaceful means and vote Israel out of existence, or Zionism, which says never, I go for Zionism, which says never.
Bernie Sanders.
Boah. Das ist wirklich crazy, dass er einfach so dass er einfach, weißt du, wie ich meine? Der gibt wirklich keinen Fick auf Political Correctness. Der sagt einfach so, ja, nee. So, der gibt halt wirklich gar keinen Fick, ne? Und das ist dieser Kahan, ne? Der Kahanismus, wo Netanyahu ja unter anderem ein Anhänger von ist, ne? Crazy, how that works. Hallo, Dre, schön, dass du da bist. Habe ich das schon gesagt? Keine Ahnung. Auf jeden Fall schön, dass du da bist.
Outraged his followers by refusing time and time again to call for a ceasefire, even as tens of thousands.
Besti Marx hat ein gutes Video zu Akanismus. Müssen wir uns auch mal anschauen. Kannst du mir das bei Streamfinity vorschlagen? Ausrufezeichen SF. Und dann, also heute werden wir uns das nicht anschauen. Wir schauen uns danach noch die Nachrichten für Genossen an. Und die Nachrichten für Genossen sind heute wieder 1 Stunde 50. Deswegen, ja, das sind heute die Nachrichten für heute. Und dann machen wir Pause. Gleich labern wir noch ein bisschen mit Meko. Und dann schauen wir Nachrichten für Genossen und dann mache ich aus und dann werde ich ein bisschen, ich will spülen eigentlich, aber mal gucken, ob das was wird, hihi. Netanyahu ist doch kein Anhänger davon? Huh? Wie meinst du?
Of Palestinians were reported killed, but he...
Ist er nicht? Kahanisten sind Teil der Krachpartei. Digga, ich dachte, gestern hätten wir... Warte, worum ging's denn gestern nochmal? Bei der Nighter News wurde doch... Dann habe ich das irgendwie falsch im Kopf. Da wurde doch gesagt, dass irgendwelche Leute Kahanisten sind. Aber ich weiß nicht mehr, wer dann. Ja gut, dann habe ich das irgendwie falsch im Kopf, Alter.
He also disappointed his followers by refusing to label Israel's campaign as a genocide.
I get a little bit queasy, and I don't, what genocide? We use the word, we gotta be careful about that word too.
It is a genocide!
What's your definition of genocide?
Why is it that it took until the 17th of September of 2025? Bernie's declaration of simply, "It is genocide," begins with his oft-repeated, "Hamas is a terrorist organization and Israel has a right to defend itself," followed by a list of all the institutions that had labeled Israel's campaign in Gaza a genocide. These include an independent UN commission, the International Association of Genocide Scholars, Israeli human rights groups B'Tselem and Physicians for Human Rights Israel, as well as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. Indeed, the latter two declared as much in December 2024. In July of 2025, Bernie once again shirked from...
Ben-Gvir und Smotrich kannst du keine Story. Okay, dann waren die beiden. Sorry, da habe ich das durcheinander gebracht. Sorry.
Using the word genocide because it's a legal term.
Are you at the point
Digga.
yet where you would call what's happening in Gaza a genocide?
You can use whatever word you want.
But Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying that she's the first Republican to go there.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Look, genocide is a legal term.
Maybe you're inclined to
Legal term mir die Eier, Alter. Was für legal term?
Give him the benefit of the doubt that he was waiting for a tribunal or the opinion of jurists at the International Court of Justice to make a decision. In a Fox town hall on March 7th, 2016, he shies away from the word genocide to describe what was occurring in territory captured by ISIS.
Do you think what's happening to Christians in the Middle East should be classified as genocide?
Look, what's happening to Christians in the Middle East, in that area, is horrific. What is happening to Muslims is horrific. It is disgusting. And
you know, I don't know that we have to put a word on it.
Just days later, on March 17th, then Secretary...
Das ist halt so geil, ne? Weil GDF ist so ein geiler Channel, der nimmt dich halt einfach hops mit den chronologischen Aussagen, die getätigt worden sind. Das ist halt richtig gute Arbeit. Wisst ihr, wie ich meine? Das ist so, aha, aber Tage später hat er das gesagt. So, weißt du, das ist so, like, du bist immer so, okay, scheiße, Mann. Like, das ist halt mega gute Arbeit, Digga, der Channel. Hier, lasst auf jeden Fall mal auch ein Like da und, ja.
Secretary of State John Kerry declared the U.S. government position that ISIS was indeed committing genocide.
In my judgment, Daesh is responsible for genocide against groups in areas under its control, including Yazidis, Christians, and Shia Muslims.
Ja, und jetzt werden mutmaßlich Jesiden wieder abgeschoben nach Afghanistan und Syrien, Alter. Aus Deutschland.
Shortly thereafter, on March 21st, Bernie cites the Secretary of State's opinion.
Secretary of State John Kerry was right to say that ISIS is committing genocide.
Ah, ist heute doch. Moment mal. Ist das etwa doch kein Legal Term?
And there is no doubt in my mind that the United States must continue to participate in an international...
Ich bin heute ein guter Stoner und mache meine Devices sauber. Good job, Kirby. Good Stoner.
...coalition to destroy this barbaric organization.
It appears Bernie did not feel queasy about declaring that ISIS was committing genocide when the Secretary of State said so. Why? That's for you to decide. Earlier this year, a bulldozer operator was invited on to the right-wing Channel 14 and was introduced by the host as the Leveler of Jabalia.
אברהם זרביב. ולא אמרתי, מלך ה-D9 משטח ג'באליה.
The live audience of the Patriots show applauded his gleeful boasting about his part in destroying entire cities. It's a scene out of a dystopian horror film.
תגיד לי, כמה בתים הורדת?
How many was?
Out of a dystopian horror film.
תגיד לי,
Tell me,
כמה בתים...
how many houses have you taken down?
הורדת? אני ממוצע
An average of 50 houses in a week, also 50 Häuser pro Woche.
שבוע שאני נמצא זה 50 בתים.
Ah, diese ganzen Häuser waren bestimmt alle Hamas. Guck mal, wie die jetzt klatschen, Digga.
לא יחידות דיור. זה אני. בניינים. אני. עכשיו, לא יחידות דיור, זה בניינים. לאן הם חוזרים הערבים?
Krass. Ich habe mir gerade als Belohnung Wax gepresst. Oh, das ist ja nice. Ich will auch mal Wax probieren, Alter. Aber da brauche ich definitiv eine höhere Toleranz für. Wenn ich so auf keiner Toleranz Wax smoken würde, ich glaube, meine Panikattacke wird eine Panikattacke bekommen. Weißt du, wie ich meine? So, und dann... meine Panikattacke wird Anxiety bekommen, so.
רפיח, אין להם מה לחזור.
They have nothing to go back to.
וג'באליה אין להם מה לחזור.
Jabalia, they have nothing to go back to.
Also describes how far from...
Ja, krass, Digga. Krass, wie du damit einfach angibst. Hat man einem Mate First Time Wax gegeben und er hat 3 Tage auf meinem Sofa gewohnt.
Being a war, there is virtually...
Also hast du einmal Wax gegeben und der so, Digga, ich glaube, mein Arsch und dieses Sofa, wir sind jetzt vereint. Ich glaube...
Zero risk for the soldiers of his Givati brigade.
תורת הלחימה של צה"ל השתנתה. אין...
Of his Givati brigade.
The Army's combat doctrine has changed.
הלחימה של צה"ל השתנתה.
There is no threat from the flanks, also es geht keine Gefahr an den Flanken. Keine Gefahr geht von den Flanken aus.
איום מהאגפים, אין איום מאחורה.
And there is no threat from the back und es gibt von hinten keine Gefahr.
כי אין אגפים ואין אחורה, רק מתקדם.
Because there are no flanks and there is no back.
קדימה והכל נהרס.
You just move forward and everything is destroyed.
אנחנו קטשנו אותם.
We crushed them.
עשרות אלפי הרוגים.
They have tens of thousands of dead. They have thousands of dead people who were eaten by dogs and cats. Tens of thousands of families They don't have papers. They don't have a childhood photo. They don't have identity cards. They don't have anything. They don't have anything. They don't know where their house is.
Hey everyone.
Ach du Scheiße. Warte, war das jetzt nicht schon vorbei? Das ist jetzt einfach so vorbei, oder was?
So describes how, far from being a war, there is virtually zero risk for the soldiers.
Das Video endet einfach ohne Outro, Digga, krass. Ja, also, ne? Oh. Ja, Bernie Sanders soll sich ficken gehen. Free Palestine. Stoppt den Völkermord. Wenn euch das Video auf YouTube gefallen hat, dann schreibt mir einen Kommentar, so wie ich das hier mache. Thank you for this informative and well-made video. Free Palestine. Schreibt einen Kommentar, schreibt ein Like, bimmelt meine Glocken, klickt Abo und checkt meinen Stream aus. Ich bin in der Regel jeden Tag live. Momentan sogar zweimal wegen Minecraft RP und News. Hustle like that. Der Hustle kennt keine Grenzen. Genauso. Ja, egal. Distanz. Passt auf euch auf. Free Palestine. Kriegt den Krieg und bleibt stabil, Mann. Schönen Tag noch.